watching you over there.
Rock Solid Agents. Hello, I'm Dan Rochon. Today I am joined with Miss Hallie Warner and Mr. Adam Hergenrother. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hallie, how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks.
All right. So I wanted to talk to you guys today and learn a little bit about your experience and learn a little bit about you. I have the privilege of knowing a little bit about you guys and admire you greatly and think you're doing just incredible things in the real estate industry. I know you're doing construction and all kinds of different things. So tell us who you are and what you do.
Hallie, why don't you take us away?
All right.
You're much more interesting.
Hardly. So I'm Hallie Warner. I've worked with Adam for almost 9 years now, in a couple of different iterations, different positions along the way. Joined him as a listing assistant, did that for about 3 months, I think. Then I became his EA for the real estate team. I did that for about 5 years, and there were several different iterations of that. And then a couple of years ago, really moved more into the chief of staff role and fully moved into the chief of staff role about 1.5 years ago when we hired an executive assistant. The construction management company, the development company formed during that time, our expansion company. Adam owns a brokerage, coaching and training. There was a property management company in there at one point, a capital firm. There's just been a lot, the book, the foundation. There's been a lot over the past 9 years.
Great. And Hallie, just one question for you before we introduce Adam. Tell us, chief of staff. Who is a chief of staff? What do you do as a chief of staff?
Yes. So
just 30-minute question.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. We don't have 2 weeks. It's like, what do I not do?
Basically, what I do is make sure I take Adam's vision and make sure that gets executed, whatever that means. That could be he wants to write a book. Okay, great, let's make that happen. And I figure out how to make it happen. Or we want to start a health insurance plan or acquire a new company. So just figuring out how to do that. I work a lot on special projects. I do a lot of hiring for leadership positions, and really just working with Adam on whatever he's working on at the time.
Awesome.
That's the way to think about it is like she's just an extension of what I am and what I'm doing. So there's basically two people doing one particular job. Just she's handling the pieces that I suck at, which is pretty much everything. And so she picks up all of those pieces and makes it look really good.
All right. Fantastic. We all need a Hallie in our lives, right?
Yes, we do.
So Adam, tell us who you are.
Just a normal dude. We started out 2006. I left the current position that I was in as a financial controller. And, I remember leaving that because a lot of people probably have left positions before to get into real estate and thinking that if I could just have my time, my freedom to do what I wanted to do, I wouldn't care how much money I made. And if I just made the same amount of money, which at the time I was making $42,000 a year, I'd be super happy. Or if I could make $50,000, it'd be great. Then of course, it's like anything in life, once you get one message or one goal, then it's the next one until, you realize that none of that actually matters, which is a whole other conversation. But I started iterations from there and I got into real estate and put my head down. And for about 3 years, I worked the grind like most people do and worked 10, 12-hour days, 7 days a week. And to build it up, get enough cash flow. And then from there, my wife and I now, she was my girlfriend at the time, basically had this goal that before we had our first child that I wanted to be financially stable and didn't want to have her to work if she didn't want to. So we set that goal out in 2008, 2009, 2008, we got pregnant in 2009, right in January of 2012, we had our first child. So 2009, we were married. Actually, we were married. That's 2009.
Hold on, Adam. When did he get married? Let him know when he got married, please.
2009, we got married. 2012, we got a kid. It was when we got married, we wanted to do that. Anyways, that's when it started. And then from there, as Hallie said, we kind of just started trickling that. The thing I'll say here is that, Hallie or I are no different than anybody else. We just got very clear. We have a very clear message of what we want to do. We're very clear on how we use our time and how productive we are. And we're also both very passionate about making sure that we bring on really amazing people into our organization that then allow us to grow big. When people see bigger organizations or things that you're doing, it's not that like Hallie and I are doing everything. In fact, the larger you get, the less you actually start doing because everybody else is doing a lot more for you. And people just miss that concept because one of the biggest misconceptions people have that, particularly for me, is they think that they're like, I never want Adam's life. He must work nonstop or be always on. How do you deal with all this stuff? And sure, there's weeks that feel like that. But for the most time, things are very structured, much more than it was in the beginning of my career. And now, just because we have the depth of people that we have in our organizations, that we can rely on each person to be able to do it. So now Hallie and I are more in the cockpit, controlling the direction, the altitude, where we're going and where we want to land. And that's really the place that we both thrive at.
So your passion is in, one of your passions is in finding the right talented people to lead you or to drive the business of what your vision is. And then you're very structured in regards to your time. That's what I heard you say to me. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, it's I couldn't say it as easily as I could now that I know a lot more about myself and just been educated more. But when I first got into real estate, my first thought was, how do I get out of real estate? And I didn't mean it like, because it's not like a negative thing. I didn't mean it like I want to get out of real estate because I'm trying to, like, I want to get on something else. For me, it was like, it was how big can I get my life? And I can't get that bigger. And I want to succeed through people. And I couldn't say it like that then, right? For me, it was just kind of this intuition. I wanted to get out of it. And I did. I got really quickly out of that, relatively speaking. And then just from there, once you figure out a model of how you remove yourself from that and you can see it working, you then can apply it to any business that you have. And it's kind of like Warren Buffett's very decentralized management. A lot of people walk into a Verizon store and says, who wants to buy or sell a home? Some people walk in there and say, who can I hire? I like to walk in there and go, how do I buy the store? Right. So then I take all their employees with it. It's just a different mindset of the different levels that you have. And that's just naturally where I go to. And so from there, we just kind of work backwards of who we need in place to be able to handle that.
Who was your first hire, Adam?
I hired my first person that I ever hired is still an agent at my market center. His name's Hergenrother. He was a buyer's agent on my team. He was a friend of mine. I hired him probably in the first 45 days I was in real estate. Remember, this was back in 2006 when teams didn't exist, not
Sure.
like they do today. I mean, I think the number one agent, Keller Williams, or number one agent in like the Real Chance magazine did like 50 million, right, in volume, which is like, doesn't even get in the top 1,000 now, right? Like, so it's back. And so I brought in a buyer's agent. He stayed with me for a long time, probably 6-7 years. And now he owns some bars and different things and still an agent. And then I went through, during that same time, I also hired EAs. Well, I call them EAs. They really weren't in terms of Hallie and I's definition of what a true EA does, but hired a lot of general administrative assistants at the time. And I went through like 6 of them in the first like 6 months. No idea what I was doing. I just knew that I needed help. And that was kind of the fail fast forward with me.
Got it. And Hallie, how long ago was your first day with Adam? How did you two meet?
I applied for a job on Craigslist.
Got it. Okay.
And
Craigslist, it was, because I always say that, and Hallie always backs it up and goes, back when Craigslist actually really worked.
Yes. So Adam had a listing assistant who was going to be moving into an executive assistant role. So she then needed to hire her replacement, which was going to be me. So she brought me in, I think, for an initial interview. And then the next time I met, she liked me, and then met with Adam. And then I took her job. And I think in like a year we fired her. But that's another story.
Got it. So do you recall the hiring process? I know that you guys have a very definitive hiring process today. At the time, was it as definitive as it is today?
I think it was like a 2-hour meeting and we hired her.
Yeah,
okay.
It was just those two interviews. And I mean, I didn't do the AVA until like 2 years after being employed. I don't even know if the AVA was part of the process at that point. So,
Sure.
So we did that later.
And the AVA is a behavioral assessment for those that don't know.
Which is now the APA. Yeah.
Right, which is now a Keller Personality Assessment, which has replaced the AVA. But we got all kinds of good acronyms.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you guys, the two of you have recently wrote a book. Is that correct?
Yep.
It is.
All right. What's the title of your book?
It's The Founder and the Force Multiplier.
How entrepreneurs and executive assistants achieve more together.
Love to see you.
I can see who's in charge of each one of those, right? That's awesome. So if I haven't had the opportunity to read the book yet, I will definitely get it and read it. So give me a Cliff Notes version of it. Put that up again real quick, Adam. Put that up, please.
Yeah.
All right, there it is. The Founder and the Force Multiplier. All right, so give me a Cliff Notes version of that if you don't mind.
I'll let Hallie jump in the clip. I'll tell you why we wrote it, because we get that question a lot. I was actually just in an interview a few minutes ago, and the guy asked why we wrote it. Last year, my blog had about 40,000 people read it from 139 different countries, which sounds really sexy, but there's a lot of people that read multiple times, so it's not as sexy as it really sounds. But there's a lot of people that read it, and so Hallie and I teamed up on a couple blogs, and we wrote an EA relationship blog, and within 24 hours, like 6,000 people read it, like literally like 6,000 different. It was by far the best read that we had, and we're like, wow, that's interesting. And then a couple months later, we wrote another one, and then it popped, the same actually thing happening, and then we did it again, and the same thing. So we tested the marketplace with it, and we saw that there was obviously a major need for a communication tool, model, and a system to be able to help people create a strategic partnership, a relationship, and really take people who want to make the EA a career in their life. How do they do that? And then how do they take it to the next level?
Got it. So it's about the interactions between the founder or the visionary and the integrator, and to be able to how the two of you can best relate. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, it's really, first of all, it defines the roles, like what is actually a force multiplier, which sometimes can be an integrator, but not always. I often see integrator more of like a COO. That's definitely not in our case at all what a force multiplier or an EA, chief of staff, is. So it is defining that a little bit, because some people are like, oh, it's just rocket fuel. No, this book is not rocket fuel at all. It's very specific about that partnership and how these two individuals together are really leading an organization and just doing two different pieces of the role. And because that relationship is so close, and it's just an intimate relationship that is sometimes different than the relationship one might have with their CFO or their director of operations. In larger organizations, it's really about how do you keep that relationship strong? How do you keep both individuals growing? How do you both increase your leadership? How do you find that person? How do you continue to communicate and build, not just build that partnership together, but actually then build careers and businesses from that? Okay,
so force multiplier. So when you're describing a force multiplier, in the relationship between, so the CEO, rainmaker, leader, is that how you would describe Adam's role?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And so tell me a little bit more about the relationship, because you just shared with me that, it's about really jointly together moving forward, while where you really described a partnership is what I heard you describe there. Not necessarily like a COO or a CFO, yet a real partnership where one of you has strengths, the other has strengths, and you're combining your strengths together to move forward. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think one of the things to remember is if you look at the actual history, which I think is a fascinating part of, we talk about this in the book, but the word secretary, right? Because this will help full circle this. The term secretary actually applies back to like the Roman emperor before it really came there, like the early 1880s. And the secretaries were actually, they were dictations. They kept dictations. They kept secrets to dignitaries or like kings or people that were like there. They were very typically male. They could speak multiple languages. They had a very high level of education. Really, because back then there wasn't Amazon Web Service to be able to store all your stuff. And so basically these kings or high level people, dignitaries, needed people next to them that were gatekeepers of holding this information. They were called secretaries. So they were extremely highly sought after, kind of thinking like the chief of staff is to the president today, right? The chief of staff has more influence, if you will, than like the vice president does, right? Sure. But then fast forward in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even the 80s, the term secretary got kind of diminished, right? And that was more of like, grab some coffee, go grab this. And it was more of a power role. Like, hey, I've got one of these person, they're here, they're just grabbing all that stuff from me. And then it's fast forward to 2000 and beyond, and people are starting to wake up and say, hey, I really want to make this a career, but this isn't an adversarial, one's higher level than the other. This is a strategic partnership that we're actually working on the same business functions together. We can just force multiply them, right? And we talk about the 0 to 10 principle in our book, Whereas, just kind of give you an example of it is if we have an idea, I may take the idea from a 0 to a 1 or a 2. And then Hallie and Amy, who's the other component of this, she's our EA, will take it from like a 2 to a 9. And then I'll take it from a 9 to a 10 or bless it. And then we'll either launch it from there or give it to another COO or another team leader of something else to go run with it. So you're still working on the same component. So really starting to see this as a relationship of a strategic business partner versus somebody who is just there to fulfill some needs that are personal to me, which there's a role for that, right? It's a personal assistant. That's a really important role for people to be doing these things. When we look at the force multiplier, that's what we're referring to.
Got it. So it's a strategic partnership. All right. So tell me about how the two of you communicate with each other. So, I mean, I've noticed that, and maybe not necessarily in the role, because what we're talking about here is the force multiplier, right? Which is different than an EA or a personal assistant. Yet, just looking at from like a leadership perspective, many people may have an EA, whatever, an executive assistant, whatever the case may be. Oftentimes, I see communication is a little bit of a challenge. You guys ever have any? How do you best communicate?
Go ahead, Hallie.
Well, I think it took time. I think initially to make sure that you had we had good communication, but it all originated from having a structure around communication, and I think that's the most important. You can't just say, well, let's have great communication. We actually put like parameters in place and communication channels in place to make sure that we were kind of forcing that good communication. So, for example, we have meetings every Monday. In the beginning, they were an hour long when we were first kind of starting to get to know each other and understand how each other work and that sort of thing and what the priorities of the organization were. Now they're 30 minutes and they're really, really quick. We just kind of go through what needs to happen, because at this point we really know what we're doing. It's just kind of checking in with each other. And a lot of times those meetings actually end up being more personal for me. They're either personal coaching sessions or whatever. So never miss the meeting between the two of you. They should not be rescheduled. It's always the meeting I see that goes first, and it should be the last meeting to be rescheduled is the meeting between the founder and the force multiplier. Again, it's establishing those communication channels. So for us, we only communicate in person or on email. I've probably only spoken to Adam on the phone like a handful of times, and we very rarely text. So figuring out how you prefer to communicate and then kind of filtering communication through those channels, or knowing that, okay, if it's an emergency, it's always going to be a phone call, but otherwise we're only going to ever email with each other. And we don't Slack or do anything like that. And then another thing that is just, I think, really helped with communication is from the force multiplier side. It's making sure that you basically study your founder. You study your visionary, you study how they speak, you study the language that they use, you study the how they make decisions, you study how they communicate those decisions to various stakeholders. You read the books that they read, you watch the TV shows that they watch. You basically try to put as much information in your head that they have in their head. One of the ways I do that is by, I read all of Adam's emails. Yes, sometimes I respond to them. At this point, I don't really need to. Anything that he gets is actually an email he needs to respond to, because we filtered those out over the years. But I actually read all of his inbox. I read all of his sent emails, and I also read all of his trashed emails, because I want to know exactly what he's saying to other people and how he's thinking.
So it's really about just understanding as best as you can to be able to get connected with each other.
Yeah, and I mean, we're both quite direct individuals. So sometimes it's just about a matter of making sure it's a behavioral match and creating a really safe environment where Adam's very open and honest with me, and he's created an environment such that I can be very open and honest with him. And that just keeps everything moving quickly.
So a direct, trusting relationship.
Yes.
I think it's crucial that if you're, a force multiplier or an EA, or you're looking to be one of those individuals, to hear what Hallie just said, though, like the time and energy that goes into doing that, to studying that person. I also think this translates into, as Hallie is the person behind the scenes in our world that makes it look good, like there's always somebody behind the scenes. This is the same way a founder needs to study their own people. Now, they may not be reading their emails, but your job as a visionary or a leader is to have that same type of, or close to that type of, the kind of pulse on your people, and having that information in there so that you can make quick decisions that are more educated than to not be paying attention to them at all. And so this takes time, which is why you can't be always in the business. If you're in the business, you never have the capacity to take in that information, to be able to make the decisions and lead the team around where you're actually going.
So besides that 1 hour Monday meeting, or so excuse me, 30-minute Monday meeting, that was originally an hour. Besides that, do you have any other structured meetings throughout the week?
No.
We do have our company meetings where Adam meets with each leader, like the leadership of each company, which I'm in those meetings just so I can make sure that I also hear what is happening. But together, we don't have any other meetings other than that.
But I will walk into her office a lot of times just to talk and disrupt her. I always walk in there and say, I got like 5 minutes. I just need to distract you for a little while. Yeah. It's mainly because I've been in a series of meetings and I just can't sit in my office anymore. So I go in and bug Hallie.
Yeah.
Got it. How many businesses do you own, Adam?
We have 5.
5. And so those are, you have a brokerage, you have an expansion team, a development business, a construction business, and what's the 5th?
Coaching and training organization and a foundation.
Got it. And what's your foundation do?
Ultimately, we support kids with fitness. It's really the main vision of it. A lot of our trainings that we do, pretty much all of our trainings this year, for the most part, are any proceeds that we have in terms of like our bigger events, like CV we're doing, or ESO we're doing, and CV. All those proceeds are going back to help to fund either a school or Special Olympics.
That's awesome. Thank you. So what should a leader be looking for in a force multiplier?
Well, I think it's you got to be able to have, first of all, I think, I said this yesterday on our webinar that we're doing. You got to make sure it's the right match. Hallie said that her and I don't really communicate via phone or text that much, if not at all, nor are we going to each other's like family events and different things. Now I know visionaries that go to their EAs, like they spend time with their family and doing those different things. So if that's your thing, you got to make sure that's a match for you. And for Hallie and I, that just works really well. We have our relationship that we have, and then that's really what it is. But other people, if they were aligned with somebody that wanted them to do that, there would be a miscommunication. They would feel kind of a little bit left out. So it's important to do that. Then obviously the big thing for me is trust, not just that like she's gonna not lie or tell secrets. Trusting that when there's a job to do or a result that we're looking for, that it's off my mind. So I never see a piece of that job back. Trusting that I give something that we need to get done, it gets done, right? I think that's one of the biggest things that you can have, because if you can't trust somebody that when you give them something to go that needs to get done for an organization, and you're constantly thinking about it in your mind, and did that get done? Did that get sent to that person? It clutters your own mind, so you can't be the visionary or leader that you need to be. So you need to find somebody that has that ability to do it. They're meticulous with their not operational, I'm not saying, but just their communication, their oral skills, because they're communicating with a lot of high-level leaders. Hallie's always checking all my spelling mistakes and telling me all the words that I say wrong. Just is finding that, the loyalty piece that you're having from there. And then just that, make sure that you have that right strategic partnership with the person to be able to take your kind of business to that next level.
Got it. Hallie, what do you look for in a leader?
Cool. Can I add? I'm going to add just a couple things. Because
tell us what he forgot.
Yes.
Well, I know how it's important that relationship is and what makes a great force multiplier. So I just want, because I know there's a bunch of leaders on this call, and I really want you to hear what you need and who you need to have right next to you. So a couple of things that Adam didn't mention were they've got to be a driver. They have to be extremely professional and kind of emotionally intelligent, great oral and written communication skills, because that's basically what they do all day is communicate on behalf of the leader, and able to translate that vision into action. They need to be an influential leader. I think I said this already, but they need to be a driver. Typically, they're going to be a DC personality on the DISC profile. And then I think this one's really critical, that they can't have an ego. They need to be really comfortable and confident leading from behind. So I just wanted to say those few things.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What do you look for in a leader?
Yeah. So they've got to be a visionary. They have to be an incredibly strong and effective leader. with integrity, and they need to have loyalty as well to their people in their organization. Somebody who's constantly increasing their leadership lid and continuing to grow as a leader. Somebody who provides a lot of opportunity and growth and room to take risks and fail forward. Somebody who challenges my thinking and force multipliers thinking and kind of pushes you outside your comfort zone, because typically force multipliers might not necessarily be natural risk takers, and a lot of autonomy and freedom. Got it.
What is the biggest challenge if we go back to communication? You told us what works. Mm-hmm. What's been the biggest challenge? Has there been a challenge at all in regards to communication or working together? Tell us a little bit about that if you could.
I mean, we get this question a lot. Not really.
Yeah.
No.
You know, maybe more in the beginning when you were kind of really first working. I try to put myself back in that situation, and there still really wasn't. I mean, Hallie did a great job of she was one of the first people to really grab something and just take it, or do something before I needed it even to be done. And that was like, it all of a sudden just showed up and it was there, and it was like, wow, that's amazing, right? And that's what a talented person's supposed to do. And so, I mean, there really has never been a major challenge that we've had to really work through that way.
Okay. Would you agree with that, Hallie?
Yes. The only thing I might add to that is that and this is just a personal thing, that I sometimes, not anymore, but I would sometimes struggle with fully saying my feelings about a particular issue, because it sometimes felt disloyal to me. And I am like one of probably and I don't know if Adam agrees with this, but my husband tells me this all the time, I am like so fiercely loyal that if I at all ever said something that felt like even a little bit disloyal, it would be really hard for me to communicate that. And that's just something I had to get over.
Got it. Let's for a second, let's separate your two roles. I'm interested to say, like, your definition of success in your role and your definition of success in general. Hallie, how would you describe somebody that was successful in your role?
Oh, good question. It would be somebody it's so hard to define, but essentially somebody who could take a visionary's vision or the leader's ideas and turn them into reality. And that does not actually mean that I do that half the time. It just means that I make sure I make other people do that. And how do I communicate that effectively to the rest of the organization? How do I tell our story publicly so that we're hiring the right talent? How do I key us up for the right opportunities for PR, for whatever I need to do to make, essentially my success is making sure that Adam is as successful as he can be.
And so, what about success just in general, not taking yourself out of the role? How would you describe success?
Success for me is making sure that I'm continuing to grow and learn. If I'm not growing, I'm not being successful.
Got it. Thank you. Adam, what about you? How would you describe someone successful in a role similar to yours?
Well, I think there's three things a leader needs to do. Number one is cast a vision, large and strong. It's not just cast a vision. Some people think growth first, but you have to remind, if you're growing in the wrong direction, in the wrong area, then you've actually led your team afar. You know, Tony Robbins uses this analogy a lot. He's like, if you're running east looking for a sunset, you're going to be running east for a long time, right? So it's vision before growth, because if you don't know where to grow or what avenues to do or what things to press, then you're running east looking for a sunset. So casting the vision often. And the thing with visionaries is that, we can see it so clearly, sideways, fronts, backs. Like it's in that mind's eye. Where if I ask people to think of an apple, like Dan, you could probably visualize the apple inside your mind, right? And if we were to stop or give you some time, you may have an audio in your mind about the last time you went to an apple orchard, what that was like, and then you may feel an emotion that was like, oh, it was a beautiful day out, or it was a pouring day, or your mind has this ability to do it. So we can see a lot of the vision of where we're going with our companies. The challenge that a lot of us have, and I know speaking for myself, is that of taking that and putting it down strategically on paper so other people can follow the footsteps. And that's where I think a force multiplier can extrapolate that out of an individual and kind of piss them off when they're doing it, but just to make sure they're very clear so they can write it down and then use that as a message to communicate to the rest of the people inside your organization. So that's what I mean by casting the vision. And that needs to happen often, right? That's not a once a year, we're going to get together at this parade and we're going to talk about our mission and boom, here it is. This is just a constant communication, putting a procedure or a process together that forces you to go out there and communicate the vision and that you're tracking it on a weekly basis. In some of our organizations, we look at it every single week. These are the 4 things that we're measuring. Where are we at with that? Where are we at with that? Over and over again to mostly the whole company. So what is it? Or if you're just having communication, how are we doing that? How are we holding, like in BlackRock, we've got, in our pipeline or under construction, we've got, I think, almost 900 units right now, right? I mean, that's a lot. That's a shit ton of properties. And so when you look at that, it's like, what's our mission with that is to retain a lot of these things and help be a steward of capital, right? So how are we always doing those things? The second piece to this is to, as we kind of goes with the vision, is providing clarity, right? And I like to use this analogy of, a lot of times when you're a leader and you're in the middle, and picture yourself in the middle of the woods and there's a dense fog and you can't see a foot. And so you don't know which way is left, south, north, east, west. You can't, you have no compass, you don't know where you're going. And so people get lost, even though they're 5 feet from the exit, they don't know where they're going. So providing the clarity means that how do you stop seeing 10 feet in front of you at the ground level? Then you can rise up in like a tree stand and start seeing 200 yards, right? And that's going to, the thing that I want people to take away from this is that there's always a finer and finer level. So if you're at a ground level, rising up to a tree stand, when you hear somebody say, you need to work on the business instead of in it so you can see it better, they may go, okay, I've arrived. Here it is. I can see 200 yards. Well, understand that there's another level. Then you can rise above the tree line and all of a sudden you're seeing 5 miles and you can start guiding your team around. Oh, there's a storm coming over there. There's a pond over here. There is a log that we can't cross. So you can navigate and provide the vision and the clarity of how to get there for your team. Then you can get up in a helicopter and you can see there's an ocean if we kept this way. So let's go into this state. It's going to take us years to get there, but I can already see it happening. So there's always a finer and finer level of how you lead your team. I want people to hear that message and be able to take that each time that they're casting their vision. They should make that message stronger and stronger and refine it so they can providing that. So number 1 is cast the vision. Number 2 is provide clarity. Number 3 is removing the roadblocks that are going to show up every single day, right? And that's not for the business. That's for your people that you're leading, your personnel, your leadership team, your agents, whoever they are that you're leading, are going to get stuck at times, right? And you have to find a way to remove what the blockage that's there for them, because if you don't, it's not like they can go home and have a shitty life and come to in the business world and be amazing. Maybe for a day or 2 or a week, but that's going to burn them out. So if there's something bothering them personally, you need to figure that out with them, right? Figure it out, clean it up with them, and then give them their space, and then get them back onto the train, right? And then in business, you have a whole bunch of roadblocks that happen. So you figure out the problem, and then you take your best people, and you always find the best people first to attack the problem. You never attack the problem without evaluating who you have on it first. So that's part of removing roadblocks, is getting the right minds, the right team to attack the problem that you actually have, which is what you need to understand what the roadblock is, and then figure out a way, a solution, provide the clarity on how you get around that, and set the vision for once you get around that, what does that look like? And now you got to build, people move faster. If you flew into Burlington and I said, when you fly into Burlington, drive to my office, right? If you did that and you didn't have Google Maps or a cell phone, right, and you had to pull out your own map, you'd probably be stressed out about it in the airplane, figure out how am I going to get there? What am I going to do? I'm renting a car, I don't know where I'm going. There's no maps. I'm going to stop at the store. I haven't done that forever, right? And so you start getting all stressed out about your having a lack of clarity, right? Whereas if you know now that when I say get there, you're going to get there and you're going to pull up your phone in a matter of 15 seconds. It's going to tell you your ETA to my office, where you're going to be and what it is. And so you're coming there with this different level of confidence, and the speed at which you work and attack the problems is much higher for your whole organization because the clarity has been set. So the 3 most important things for a leader in the role are vision, casting the vision, providing massive clarity on a daily basis to people and the problems there, using the best people to attack them, and then remove the roadblocks.
Got it.
My definition of success for, if you remove myself from the role, I believe the highest form of any spirituality, of any form that we can take, is to serve the moment that is in front of us by making the moment better because it passed through us. So that means that you're present in the moment. You're no longer in your mind or unconscious or caught yourself being involved in an emotion, you're currently involved in the moment that's there. And when the moment shows up, you get an opportunity to raise the moment up. That's the highest form for me in terms of success from a spiritual aspect, because when you do that, you're always engaged with your team. You're engaged whether you're doing a live interview, you're engaged in the conversation that you're doing, and that joy that comes from being present in the moment, you don't just inject that into somebody, it comes through you and into them, and then you're passing on that level of success so then they can take that and become a different person.
Have you always had that, Adam? Has that been something that's developed through time? That presence in the moment?
Jesus, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was a completely different person a decade ago. I mean, a completely different, physically, mentally, spiritually. And I'm really proud of the journey that I got to go through, because I think some of the people that can go the deepest on one end can actually go the deepest on the other, because they're naturally have this aggressive attitude and kind of this compulsive need to go and it's very, what's the word I'm looking for, guys? You gotta help me out here.
Hallie, help them out.
Yeah.
Like obsessed or
what the hell's that we always call it? Anyways, but whenever you get really obsessed on one thing, you go down there and you can go down that path. But then when you flip that switch, it actually goes really quick in the other direction. And for me, it's just been this amazing journey, which is why we're so passionate about personal growth through business success. Look, when you build a business, the thing is about building a business and entrepreneurship in general puts you in a situation that you never put yourself in, right? So then you get to solve it. I mean, how many times would you sign up for a lawsuit? Or how would you sign up for 10 people to leave your company at once? Or or you get appealed for the 6th time, or the funding that you wanted dried up at the last 24 hours. No, the world puts you in those situations so that it tests you to bring consciousness into the moment so you can stay intensely present, so you can solve the problem and grow spiritually through the problem. Remember, if you are more stressed about trying to get somewhere, then you've missed the point of life. Because once you get somewhere, you're just going to stop and try to get somewhere else. And you live this entire life of living in the future, which is just a mind-made image. Understand that. When you are not in the present moment, you are living in the future, which the future means you're living in a mental image that you've created of some expectation of how life should be. Or if you're living in the past, you're living in a mental image of how the past treated you, and you have a dialogue and emotions around that. So either way, you live in the past or the future, you're no longer serving the present moment, which you can't serve the people in front of you.
What was the turning point for you?
What?
What was the turning point?
I don't know if there was a click for me, some minute to moment that I was like, okay, go to this route. It's just like anything. It's progression. It's once you become aware that there's a deeper truth. For me, it was back in 2007 or so when I made about $500,000 that year net income. I had this feeling in my I had this kind of, when I was growing up, I was like, if I ever made $500,000, I was going to be this amazing person, right? I was going to be like a dignitary or a king or some shit like that. I don't know what it was. I was just thinking, right?
King Adam.
Yeah. When you actually got there, I remember the conversation. And I get passionate about this, right? I remember the conversation. I was actually having this conversation with my mom, and I remember telling her, I was like, hey, look, I made this money. And she's like, oh, that's great. And she just doesn't give a shit, right? And I realized at the time that people don't care about what your success is unless it benefits them, right? I mean, they're like, oh, that's great, that's there, right? And some people do. That's not a true statement, but you get the point. And so then I got depressed. I actually got really depressed because I was like, well, if money is not this magical potion that was going to show up at my doorstep and I was going to open it up and it was going to jump inside and change the way I feel instantly, then why am I here? What's the point? And so I went on this. Remember, the answer is always there. It's just we have to formulate the question, and we have to formulate the right question in order to elicit the right answer that we need. A lot of times we need to flip the question that we're asking ourselves instead of just trying to expect something to show up under a Christmas tree one day. So for me, it was a flip. And then I went on and I started doing transcendental meditation. I went on this whole inward journey, and I pretended to be inward a lot more than I was, but I was trying to act it because I was trying to do there and get there. And I knew that if I just pretended to be this, and I wasn't trying to pretend it, I was actually trying to get there. I just didn't know how else to do it. And then, you just keep doing more methods and more methods and more methods and teaching and reading and just nonstop. And then all of a sudden you hit a hockey stick, just like you do in business and just like you do in your personal life. And really the last 12 months has been a hockey stick for me inwardly. And it's been this just massive journey. And I've still got a long ways to go, but now I'm really passionate about getting people into joy, which joy is not happiness. Happiness is a fleeting emotion. It comes and goes. It's buying a car. It feels good for 2 weeks and it goes away. Happiness is an emotion. Just it comes and goes. Joy comes from understanding that it's this constant flow of energy that's inside us. Like, think about this, Dan. And I'll stop. Think about this.
You're good, man. I love it. Keep going.
If you get a really good phone call, right? A really good phone call or a really amazing conversation. The news they bring you just lights you up. It's like it tiptoed through your tulips, right? Just lit you up, right? Exceeded your expectation. How do you feel instantly, right? Just this euphoric high. You probably even do this sometimes. You buy a lottery ticket, people that are listening, and you imagine what it would be like to win $100 million. And that just alone makes you feel amazing, right? I mean, I've done it. We all done it. You dream that whole thing. So you get that information. Was it the information that where did that joy come? Where did that feeling come from? Was the phone like injecting something in you? No. What it was that you have an expectation for life and you have a current expectation for life. Your blueprint's matching your expectation. And if you have an event occurs that increases your expectation, you all of a sudden you allow yourself to open up and you allow the joy that's already inside you to shine through. What most of us do, or conversely, if it's negative and we get negative information, we shut ourselves off and we say, oh, you feel that emotion drop. So all we've done is closed off because we're making the moments that happen in life personal. Understand that there are millions of moments that have happened in the last second, all from here to outer space, that we didn't make personal, yet people were dying, people were having happiness, all this stuff. So it's about understanding that if you can serve the current moment and make the moment better because it passed by you, you will be in the present moment and you will bring out the joy in others. And then remember, you don't get joy from doing an activity. You bring joy to the activity. It's just a different way of thinking. And understand that spirituality is not about getting something. Spirituality is about getting rid of something so that you can actually be who you are. It's not about achieving things, about doing things. This is fascinating. If you actually think about it, for millions of years, right? Human beings, when they were about to die or got old, were basically rewarded. As you got older, you were revered, right? The older people had this ability, they're like, I want to be around them. They had all this wisdom, they had all this stuff. Well, all of a sudden you fast forward now, and older people are like, they're at best cute, right? You don't see them in the same way. You want to know why? It's because our society has got such a compulsiveness on doing. And when you get older, you can no longer do, and what you're doing is being, and that being is not being reflected as something that's a success. So they start literally cutting off people who become old now because you can't do or contribute to my value. So they're taking away that. In fact, you should switch that around and be like, the being is actually what you need to be doing, because when you do the right activity in the right action, the right moment is going to unfold, and it's going to make life a lot easier than it's probably been for you, because you're still trying to make things, you're trying to manipulate the external world to match your expectations, which is the wrong way to live.
That's a whole lot there, Adam. Tiptoeing through the tulips. I love that. I love it. Tiptoeing through the tulips. Thank you for sharing that. Hallie.
Yeah.
All right. True. We're going to transition here. So what type of advice would you give to a force multiplier, to an executive assistant or someone in a similar role?
Just general advice.
Yeah. Or what's one piece of advice? If I was an executive assistant, if I was a force multiplier, a chief officer, what would you provide for me?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so much. But the one thing that I like to tell people who are in this role, and a lot of time in real estate too, because real estate that's where I started, right? I don't consider myself really working in real estate anymore. I did for a couple of years when I first started working with Adam, but I haven't for many. But what's really cool about the real estate industry is that there are so many opportunities. And I think probably 5 years or so ago, we really saw this executive assistant role in the real estate world. That is not what we consider an executive assistant in our world. Two completely different positions. However, about 4 or 5 years ago, we've started to see the EA in real estate now transition to a director of operations, which is a much more applicable title, in my opinion, to what this person actually does. So my point of that is, whoever's in that position, if you're a director of operations, if you're actually an EA to a founder, if you're a transaction coordinator, listing manager, whatever role you're playing on the team, you've got to get really clear on who you are, and you need to figure out what role you want to play, not only right now on your team, but in the future. So that's what I did probably 5 or 6 years ago. I got very clear that I had no desire to ever be a director of operations or a COO. And I did a lot of research on the various roles and concluded what I was doing was not any of those things. And that's not what I wanted, the direction I wanted to go in. So I continued to go down the EA chief of staff road. But you just got to get really clear on who you are, what it is that you actually want to do. And you may, after doing some of that research, realize that you love working with clients and you love transaction coordination. That's fantastic. That is not an EA position, or that's not a chief of staff role. And that's totally fine too. I know that I cannot work with clients and I would be horrible at it. So I had to get that off of my plate as quickly as possible. And that was like within 30 days, probably. I didn't work with clients. And the other thing I wanted to add is to take control of your career. I think sometimes EAs are waiting for opportunity. And I say EAs, I really just mean force multiplier. I'm using that term generically. To take control of your career and not wait to be asked to take on a new opportunity, or wait to be invited to a meeting, or wait to be invited to a training. You need to say, I'm coming to that meeting. Here's a training that I'm going to go to. And you know what? Sometimes they might not pay for it. That doesn't mean you don't go. You go anyway, and you figure out a way to pay for it yourself. I paid for a lot of trainings in the beginning because I wanted to go to them. Sometimes it was because I just didn't ask Adam, and I just didn't speak up. And I would encourage you to do that first. But for whatever reason, if they say no, go anyway. Take control of your own career, and not just sit and wait for the opportunity to come to you.
So have clarity, take charge,
yes,
take action, and ask Adam to pay for the training. Is that what I heard?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. Adam, what advice would you give to a CEO, a rainmaker, a visionary?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to just get very clear on your vision and who you want to become, and then attract the people that are going to be like you. I don't mean like you, I mean that share the same common vision for where you're going in an organization. They don't have to agree with your politics. They don't even have to agree with necessarily what you like to do outside of work. But if you have the same shared vision for it, you're going to attract those type of individuals. So be who you are, bring that identity to the surface, so that when you walk into a room, 50% of the people go, I love this dude. 50% of people go, I hate this dude, right? So, but at least you're very clear, and they don't really hate you, you know what I mean? Like you're very clear on, do you like Coke? Do you like Pepsi? Right? Do you like Android or do you like iPhone? It's not like you hate an Android if you have an iPhone, or maybe you do, but you get the point. They're both great products. It's just you get to decide on which one. Do you like Honda or Toyota or BMW or Audi, right? Or Lambo or Ferrari, right? It's just there's always competing different signs there. It doesn't mean one's right or wrong. It's just you got to be who you are, so you don't try to be everybody. And I see people making that mistake when they're trying to cast their vision out there. Number two is, so let's build a brand, right? Build a brand of who you are, because it's so important to do that. Get as much good publicity as you can out there, because when you have negative publicity, which will come if you get big enough, you need a lot of it to drown it out, right? The other thing is that you need to get very clear on your own. I said this before, but very clear on your own vision. I ask, leaders, like, what is your vision? What are you sharing that with people? You can see how passionate I get about the vision for where I want to take our organization. They should have that same passion for what it is they are. If they haven't found that yet, it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just means that you just need to take some time and think about where you want to bring your organization to. What do you want to be known for? How do you want to translate to your people? How do you want to impact their lives? What is that token? And it's going to be a different brush for every person, but figure it out for you.
Thank you. Hallie, what advice would you give to yourself 5 years ago today? If you're talking to Hallie 5 years ago, what advice would you give to yourself?
I would say take more time for myself personally, maybe go on a few more, maybe, take some weekends off or go on a couple more vacations, and basically not put so much pressure on myself, and put myself first, my relationship second, and work third instead of work first. And Adam and I've talked about all this, instead of work first, relationship second, and myself, like, I wasn't even on the list. So.
Got it. Adam, how about you? What advice would you give to even 10 years ago, Adam? Like, let's go back to when you're starting, day one.
I would have hired higher level leaders earlier on. Is one thing I would have done. I would have bought in more real estate, and I would have. I invested a lot in myself, so I'm not saying I would do that differently. I think I probably would have gotten 10 years ago. I probably would have gotten more into technology. If I could do that all over again, I probably would have learned that more quicker when it was just starting out, and maybe, try to create one of those. I would have learned more about the technology base.
Yeah. Hallie, what's next for you?
Oh, we've got so much stuff going on. It's actually pretty cool and exciting. The book is still going strong, which is fantastic. I'm sure we'll write another one either this year or early next year. So we're working on that. We've got a couple of new coaching programs coming up. We have one called Unleash Joy that will be later this year that we'll be launching in Charleston, South Carolina. Project U is happening this year and then next year as well, which is a small full immersion coaching program for a small group of kind of high-level leaders. What else are we doing? Hiring more leaders, hiring more talent.
Companies.
Yeah.
Adam, tell us more about that. What else what's new for you specifically, Adam?
Well, I think there was actually, Hallie made a point about a year ago now. She goes, we haven't really created anything more. We've just been going deeper in our current companies. Before it was about creating, and then it's been a stabilization. So now that's what we're doing. And now we're fully aligned with creating a fully vertically integrated firm. BlackRock has construction commercially, construction residentially. Residentially is bifurcated into luxury and production style. We have a development arm. We have a syndication arm. We have an equity, that's the equity side of things. We have, so we have healthcare campuses. So we're just kind of keep going on there. And now it's how do we take what we've built and add on more layers to that to have even more full integration. We're looking to, So there's some things that we're looking to acquire right now that we're in the works with right now. That's what we're doing.
Got it. How do I get your book?
Amazon.
Amazon,
but we'll post a link in there.
Yeah, of course we will. Adam, can you show us the book one more time? Do you have it there?
Absolutely.
It's also on Audible for all you Audible.
It's on Audible.
Oh, thank God. Thank you. Yeah. I will get that on Audible in about 34 seconds here. So
Awesome.
All right, Adam, Hallie, I really appreciate the both of you for joining us today, for sharing your wisdom. I wish you nothing but the best in your success and your growth. And thank you for being a mentor for me and being a guiding light for many, many people in this business. So I really, truly appreciate that. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Well, thanks, Dan. And I know that this takes a lot of time and energy to do out of your day to help change the lives of other people. So keep doing your thing.
All right, man. Thanks.